Okay, we are on.
Okay, we're live.
Hold on, it's preparing, it's going there, I hope. So here we go. We are on officially. Good. All right, we have viewers on and you're ready to go. Let me admit everybody. And we have some connections on the website and on the, I believe on the Facebook as well.
Excellent.
Admit the users. Very good, let's start.
Okay. We ready?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Dennis Krasnikotsky. I'm the Chief of Operations at the New York Institute for Humanities and the Social Studies. And our primary mission is expanding interdisciplinary knowledge through the support of initiatives in humanities and social studies. Which brings me, of course, to the project we are doing today, which is the Holocaust Remembrance project. And I'm excited to be joined by Alex Yevtuhovich of Collegium Musicum of New Jersey, by Polina Nazaikinskaya, who is a composer and scholar, and by Rebecca Jackson, who actually is an author and also a fellow musician. And I guess with no further, I will pass the microphone to Mr. Yevtuhovich.
Thank you, Dennis. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Paulina. Good evening, Rebecca. Thank you very much, Dennis, for helping us to organize tonight's event. It's very important for us, for Collegium Musicum as an organization. It's second year for our organization working on the project on the Holocaust Remembrance, and specifically our goal is to promote music which was created, composed at the time of the war, at the time of the Holocaust. And first half of our presentation, of tonight's presentation, will be dedicated to the music created in Terezin or Terersienstadt concentration camp. So as we will start, let me say a few words about Terezin, since this is one of the less known story of the Holocaust. We all know about the big, terrible numbers, 6 million lives taken by Nazis. We all heard all the stories and the numbers, everything about the Auschwitz, Birkenau, Majdanek, Sobibor, other death camps, and the concentration camps. However, the Terezin stayed kind of unique in the history of the Holocaust. The Terezin was the only ghetto, Jewish ghetto / concentration camp which exists on the territory of the Czechoslovakia. Originally, it was built as a small fortress on the border of the Czech Republic and Germany. And it was the garrison. It was designed originally to hold up to 5,000 people. In 1941, after Moravia was taken by Germans, NSS start implementing their plan. So they decided to put Jewish population of Prague to the Terezin. And it was designed as a transfer camp, as a transfer area to further transport prisoners to the east, to Poland, and to extermination. However, this concentration camp, this Jewish ghetto, was used as the Potemkin's village, as a propaganda area. And the Nazis worked on their absolutely terrible plan. They put the people of culture and the Terezin, and they allowed all kinds of cultural activities in the camp. Many people of artistic were detained into that camp. Composers, musicians, many artists were there. Philosophers and educators, famous rabbis, famous professors from all over the Europe, mostly from Czechoslovakia. But during the Terezin time, over 140,000 prisoners went through this camp. And the numbers about this camp are terrible. It cannot be considered as a death camp. However, the people were rotating through this camp. They were allowed to compose music. They were allowed to write music, to actually perform. But then they were sent to Auschwitz and other camps. Out of over 140,000 people, about 88,000 people were perished in the death camps. And some other terrible number, many historians think that from approximately 15,000 children, only a little bit over 100 survived. Those are the numbers, terrible numbers. However, tonight I would like to tell everybody the story about the composers and perform some music. But I would like to start our musical presentation with a piece of the Remembrance. So there's going to be Kaddish with a video footage taken from the Terezin, how it looks today. Allow me to start this presentation. Well, we're going to continue our program, and now I would like to say a few words about one of the composers, a young man who went through the Terezin and unfortunately who did not survive the concentration camps, the death camps. Gideon Klein. Gideon Klein, a young pianist, he was born in a Jewish family in Moravia and showing his musical talent very, very early. Gideon Klein was a prize winner student at the Prague Conservatory, where he studied piano, and he graduated from the Prague Conservatory in 1939. Also, Gideon was studied composition with Alois Haba, one of the very well-known Czech composers. He was forced to abort his university studies in 1940 when the Nazis closed all institutions of higher education following their occupation of Czechoslovakia. Since compositions and performances by Jewish musicians were banned, Gideon's only works could not be performed, though he managed to perform as a concert pianist under several aliases names. And he was known under the pseudonym Karel Vranek. So despite these harsh circumstances, Klein managed to continue composing and even performing. In 1940, Gideon was offered a scholarship at the Royal Academy of Music in London. But by the time, anti-Jewish legislation prevented his immigration. In December of 1941, Gideon Klein was deported by the Nazis to Terezin concentration camp, where along with other very well-known composers, the pupil of Leos Janáček, composer Pavel Haas, and Hans Krause, and the Schoenberg's pupil, Victor Ullmann, Gideon Klein, along with his friends, he became one of the major composers of that camp. He gave concerts since the Terezin camp became one of the few in which artistic activity was permitted by Nazis. So his works from these years include music for string quartet, string trio, piano sonata, among others. Also, Gideon Klein, he performed as solo pianist on many recitals and participated in chamber music performances as a member of piano trio and a piano quartet. In 1944, Gideon Klein was deported to Auschwitz in October of 1944. And then he was selected went to Fürstengrube at coal mining labor camp. And that happened less than 2 weeks after Gideon completed his last music piece, the string trio. Gideon died under unclear circumstances during the liquidation of the Fürstengrube camp in January of 1945. However, before he was deported from Terezin, he left his manuscript to Irma Senechka, his Terersienstadt girlfriend. And then later, after the liberation, those manuscripts were turned over to his sister, Lisa Kleinova. That happened after the war. And that's how we have a chance to get this music. Now, it wasn't published, so the music, the string trio is quite popular among the performers these days. So let me turn this recording of string trio by Gideon Klein performed by the Collegium Musicum members. And let me just remind you, this string trio was the last composition of the Gideon Klein. The first movement was completed on September 5th, the second movement on September 21st, and the third movement on October 7th of 1944, just 9 days before Gideon Klein transportation to Auschwitz. Well, we are back, and let me tell you a few more stories. First of all, I would like to tell everybody what was used, what exactly you've seen during this music performance. Um, and the second movement of this trio, we used the materials provided by Yad Vashem Museum in Jerusalem. Also, we've been working with EMI group, Yelena Makarova, historian and researcher, specialized in the history of the Terersienstadt. She spent more than 25 years going through each and every activities and making the catalog on everything was happened in Terezin. She provided some materials. So in the second moment, you've seen the actual pictures, the drawings by the children who were prisoners of the Terezin. And one of the teachers, her name was Mrs. Dicker Brandis. who started working in the Terersienstadt with the children, and actually she taught them how to draw, how to make the pictures. And she wrote the book, The Study, in 1942 while in Terezin. She wrote the study called Art as Therapy for Children. And that was based on what she was teaching and experienced working with the kids. Later, after the war, the survivors of the Terezin and his students, they actually started the program, which now known as the art therapy, to work with the children with psychological problems. Dickie Brandis, she was sent to Auschwitz in 1944. And right before she was transported, she managed to save 2 big boxes, the collection of the children drawings. Over 4,000 drawings were saved. And later, some of those drawings were sent to the United States. In 1993, there was a book published in the United States, which widely known by the title, I Never Saw Another Butterfly. That's the collection of the children drawings and the children poetry from the Terersienstadt. Another video footage which you saw on your screen, that was short video story about very famous person of the Terersienstadt. His name was Karl Schwenk, and he was in charge of the cabaret. He was creating the satiric sketches and performances, very popular among the Terezin prisoners. He was writing some songs and the poems as well, and one of his songs became unofficial anthem of the Terezin. And the wording was about that one day we will be out of this prison, we will be out of barracks, we will be free, and we will be alive. Now, very short, I will try to be very quick here because we have a lot of music to present. I would like to tell about next piece where we'll perform the music written by another famous and probably most important composer of the Terezin, Victor Ullmann, who was the student of Schoenberg and Alexander Zemlinsky. He was well-known musical critic, musicologist, and a very talented composer. We'll perform his string quartet number 3, which was written in 1943 while he was being in Terezin. And along with that music, you will see the footage, video footage of the infamous German propaganda movie, which was created at the Terezin. In 1943 and 1944, there was the request by the Red Cross and the royal families of Denmark, who were very worried about the Jewish families who were deported to Terezin. So Nazis decided to create a video to show entire world and actually to show the Red Cross inspection. So there's not such a big problem with the Jewish question. They reported one of the movie maker, Kurt Giron, who was the videographer and a movie director. He was sent to Terezin to work on the first stage. There was the beautification of the camp, while all the sick and older people were sent to Auschwitz. And there was the beautification made to the buildings and to the barracks. So the Kurt Giron created the movie, propaganda movie, showing the entire world how beautiful life is in Terezin. And the name of the movie was The Führer Given the Town to Jews. You will see the footage from that movie. The movie right now held in the United States Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. So we've been able to receive some footage, and also we'll be using shorter pieces from the motion picture created in 2002 in Canada. Along with the music, you will see some real picture from the Terezin concentration camp. You will see the real faces of people who went to that camp. People playing sports and sport. Because once movie was completed and presented to Red Cross, all participants, about 5,000 people, were put in a transport and sent to Auschwitz, where they will perish. Among them was Victor Ullmann, the composer, the author of the string quartet, Kurt Giron, Hans Krasse, the author of the children opera Brundibar, many, many other musicians, about 5,000 people. Let me present to you our performance of Victor Ullmann String Quartet number 3. Well, we're back again, and before I will pass the microphone to Denis, I would like to say just a few more words about Terezin. Uh, Terezin is such a unique part of history of the Holocaust. It's impossible to tell the story of Terezin in a one single event. So Collegium Musicum actually going to continue to work on the presentation to tell more stories about each of the composers, and each of them actually deserve and needs to have enough time in a single event. And the Terersienstadt, which wasn't actually the paradise, let's not make a mistake. It was Jewish ghetto under Jewish self-governing body, but still they were surrounded by SS. Still, there was enormous hard labor. The men, women, and children were separated. And the town originally built to hold up to 5,000 people. At the time, there were over 65,000 people imprisoned in that place. So there were the starvation, there was terrible, absolutely terrible condition living or trying to survive there. However, the arts, the music, the education allowed the prisoners to remain human, an absolutely unhuman condition. And that's what we need to remember today. That's what we need to bring to the public, and we need to continue to tell the story of Terezin as one of the chapters, less known, but still that's a part of the story, history of the Holocaust. Now I would like to pass the microphone to Dennis. And Dennis, could you please tell us a few words about our plans, and then we can continue to the next portion of our program. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Alex. Thank you. That was really touching and really wonderful to hear something that we don't hear quite often. You know, we could easily say that while doctors together with scientists, they revive the living, we as musicians, we have to a certain degree a much more meaningful position of reviving the dead. So they can speak through us, through our playing. And that is very important, which brings me to the subject of the Holocaust project that we, Alex and I, have decided to put together. Holocaust, International Holocaust Remembrance Day was yesterday, January 27th. And we initially thought we would have a couple of more people joining us. They were not able to join yesterday, but today they were not available either. So that was the reason we've moved it to the 28th. Why? So somebody would say, why? Everybody already knows about the Holocaust, the horrors of concentration camps. Everyone had seen the photos, yada yada. It's a known fact. Well, it is a known fact, but how often at time do we forget something that we know very well? And the fact that concentration camps and their widespread knowledge was well known throughout the world. It didn't stop from other countries from creating concentration camps. As a matter of fact, when my father moved from Shanghai in 1954, he was born and raised in Shanghai. He essentially was not a citizen of China because citizenship was not given to him at the time. He was pretty much a non-citizen. But when his mother decided to go back to Russia because of a heavy propaganda on the part of the Soviet government, they were, upon crossing the border, they were immediately taken to the internment camps, which is sort of like a concentration camp with slightly different rules. They were not living in barbed wires, but they were living in the middle of nowhere and in Siberia and working in the lumber industry. Essentially, my dad was cutting trees for a couple of years before he was approved to be not a reliable Soviet citizen, but at least acceptable to the society, and they could move out somewhere else. So to me, it really is a special project, and it always bothers me to see the progress that the humanity had made in the past 200 years, starting with industrialization and with the technological achievement of 20th century and what we have now. We're talking versus via internet, and we're very far physically away from each other, yet we're all close. We're all here at the same time. And this just mind-boggling technological progress is completely out of balance with the ethical and moral progress that the humanity had made up to this point. And part of it is the education, is learning about the past, is being aware of who you are and who the others are around you. And that is very crucial if we as humanity would want to survive and move forward, or else perish to exist, eliminate each other in hatred, in wars. Interesting story. Talking about the past, I remember some of you might heard of Hiram Maxim. He was best known for the design of a machine gun known as the Maxim machine gun during 19th century. He was an American inventor. He actually became known as a designer of inhaler to help people suffering from effects of asthma and tuberculosis. But his invention was called a quackery, that basically he was accused of promoting something that didn't work. So somebody suggested, why don't you do something useful? And they suggested, design a machine gun or something. That's exactly what he did. And he became actually known for the Maxim machine gun. This is, again, an anecdote that tells us about the priorities that we have. Moving forward, we have the next piece is Max Bruch's Kol Nidre. This is probably a well-known piece to a lot of you. To those who do not know, Max Bruch composed the piece in, I believe he completed the work in 1880. Dedicating the piece to Robert Hausmann, who was a cellist, who performed this piece later on with Brahms's double violin concerto, cello violin concerto. Yes, interestingly enough, he was a Protestant, and he was enchanted by the melody. And there's a quote from Max Bruch somewhere. Even though I'm a Protestant, as an artist, I deeply felt the outstanding beauty of these melodies, and therefore I gladly spread them through my arrangement. The melodies he's talking about is Kol Nidre, all vows, is the call for the prayer recited in the synagogue on the evening of Yom Kippur. And today we have our Alex Yevtukovich on violin, and pianist, a professor of Belgrade Academy of Music from Serbia, Maja Rajkovic, who came actually here to perform concerts in September. And they had an opportunity to quickly put this piece together. So we will be hearing this piece now. Am I correct, Alex?
Yes, and before I will put this video, which we recorded in September, I would like to say how it's related to our event today. Actually, as beautiful as piece of music there will be performed, and we tried our best, but I think they're much more important, the text, which you will see on your screen. This text was published in 2016 in a Jewish magazine here in New York City. And this text is a little story based on a true story which happened in Auschwitz. So I would encourage everybody read from the screen, because I think it's equal, if not more important than the music which you will hear. Well, let us continue, and just a very short remark which I would like to make. I've been very often asked lately, Alexei, why you're doing these programs? Why you're spending so much time? Why you're dedicating so much of your time to this thematic, to Holocaust? You're not even Jewish. What is the reason to do it? Well, my answer to everybody, first of all, you don't need to be Jewish to talk about Holocaust. That's number one. Number two, I see the Holocaust and the history, what's happened in the middle of 20th century. And now our reflection on this history. The Holocaust is like a very fragile crystal ball. And inside that ball, a lot of hatred, the racism, bad talking to each other, intolerance. Everything is inside this crystal ball called Holocaust. And if we as a humanity, we will not support this crystal ball, if we will drop it, we will stop talking about this, we will stop remembering what happened. We will not talk about the real names of real people who went through Holocaust, who died, and who survived. And we will not do that. Then we will facing the Holocaust again. It may have a different name. It might be different nation or group of people or class or social group. But it's going to be there again, unfortunately. The humanity, the human, very naturally looking for somebody to finger point and blame. Democracy is a very strong word, same as the tolerance. And the people need to learn how to use this word and understand what's the meaning behind this. The humanity, the population of our planet, need to learn and be reminded every day. Be reminded on the story of the Holocaust and learn how to love each other, how to love the life. The way people who went through Holocaust, who survived the concentration camps, the way they loved their life. So with that, I would like to go with our next chapter of tonight's presentation. Dennis, I will pass the microphone to you and please invite our wonderful guests of the evening.
Thank you, Alex. And now we will have a very interesting story about a Holocaust survivor, David Arben, who was the only member of his family to survive. He later served as a violinist of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and he was an associate concertmaster for about a decade. I personally have not had a chance to meet David, but I've heard of him from many sources. And today to talk about him is Rebecca Jackson, who wrote a book entitled David Arben's Life of Miracles and Successes. Rebecca.
Thank you. Will we begin the video now, Alexei?
Sure, it's up to you, yes.
Okay,
Yes, let me start it. Just give me 1 second and we will be on.
thank you. The man who said those words was violinist David Arben, a man who entered my life when I was 17 years old. Little did I know that 20 years later, my father, Dr. John Jackson, and I would publish his biography. Throughout my studies at Juilliard, I would take the bus to visit him, spending long, uninterrupted hours learning from him about music and life. He loved life like no other. In 2008, I started a festival, Music in May, where he finally met my family and stayed with us annually. For our 5th anniversary, I commissioned Paulina to write a piece inspired by his miraculous life. A boy who last saw his family at 13, survived 7 Nazi detention facilities, and yet rose to associate concertmaster of one of the world's greatest orchestras. David Arben was born in Warsaw in 1927 and given the name Chaim, meaning life. Chaim was the sole survivor of his family and attributed his survival to 2 things, the love of his family and the violin. Following the war, he joined the ex-concentration camp orchestra, a group that played for Nuremberg trial judges. In 1949, he arrived in the US, where he finally found the violinist his father had taken him to see perform in 1936. 9-year-old Chaim's dream finally came true, studying with Ephraim Zimbalist at Curtis, where he graduated in 1954.
I have a special story for you tonight. 5 decades ago, U.S. troops freed David Arben from a Nazi concentration camp in Poland. He began a new life in America as a concert violinist right here in Philadelphia, but returned to Poland last month to bring closure to the nightmare of his younger days. In this News 3 special report, David Arben shares his emotional journey with you.
Well, when I first arrived in Warsaw, got off the airplane, I couldn't breathe. For about 3 minutes, I thought something terrible was going to happen to me.
56 years ago, something terrible did happen to David Arben and his family in Warsaw. They were rounded up by the Nazis and sent to concentration camps. David was the only member of his family to survive the Holocaust.
It wasn't an easy decision for me to go to Poland, to go to Warsaw.
Hardly a sentimental journey, Arben returned to his native Poland last month at the request of the committee putting together Israel's 50th anniversary celebration.
I realized that this is the only time that I can give the dignity to my family. And the fact that the Philadelphia Orchestra was at the same time in Warsaw made it easy for me.
Easy because the Philadelphia Orchestra has become Arben's second family. In 1959, he joined the orchestra as a concert violinist, playing with them until his retirement in 1993. But David Arben's trip to Warsaw rekindled bittersweet memories. He walked the streets near his hotel, tracing the steps he took as a young boy.
I had the strangest feeling. I had a feeling that I'm just a ghost. I was looking at everybody passing by, hoping for something impossible. Maybe someone will recognize me. Maybe, perhaps I will recognize someone. But this was just a dream.
Arben says the high point of his trip was returning to the synagogue, where his father took him as a child.
I had this unbelievable sensation that my family was with me. Spiritually, they were with me. I saw them. I felt them. It was a strange feeling that I was so close, and yet I could not touch them.
He couldn't touch them, but he touches us with his story and his music. And when he played his violin at Warsaw's only remaining synagogue, he played for his family. I have to tell you that talking to David Arben is an inspirational experience. He is a man of courage whose story must be heard by future generations. Right now, he is the family that survives, the only one left to keep the flame of love and respect glowing.
Life is beautiful. Nothing can substitute life.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here. Every time I have the opportunity to speak about Mr. David Arben, it gives me a lot of meaning because he gave so much to me. So thank you, Dennis and Alex, for having me. I'm going to say just a few more words. And if one is truly blessed, there is a person who will come into your life and have a profound impact. For me, that person was Mr. David Arben. A card of thanks that I wrote to him after that summer I met him as a 17-year-old in Puerto Rico was the start of what became one of my most treasured friendships. He was an advisor to me as I built my chamber festival, Musicum in my hometown of Santa Cruz. And I felt the best way to celebrate our 5th anniversary in 2012 was to celebrate Arben's life. So I made plans to commission a new work inspired by his life. Paulina was highly recommended, and even though we first met by email and phone, I immediately sensed a depth of character, her heart, her humanity. And to me, these are all things that make up the most sought after artists. My instinct couldn't have been more correct. Worth repeating, the title of Paulina's work is Heim. The name Arben was given when he was born in 1927. In preparation for this gathering, I've been thinking back to that weekend of the premiere in 2012. And what stands out to me, besides Mr. Arben saying what a gifted composer Paulina is, it's after we performed. After all of us took our bows with Mr. Arben, we gathered in the wings of backstage. As he expressed his appreciation, he was moved to tears. There was so much love. It has been a profound journey bringing this piece to life with Paulina and our colleagues to many more audiences since 2012, Arben attending most of these performances till his passing. I know each time Paulina's music is played, the spirit of Arben soars and he will live on forever. Arben's father once said, "One day the world will know my sons." I am very thankful to Collegium, Musicum, and New York Institute for Humanities and Social Studies, and each of the artists involved in today's performance for being a part of helping fulfill his father's prophecy.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you so much. And now, Paulina.
So I have a photograph here. You can see myself and Rebecca, and between us, David Arben standing. Meeting David and Rebecca changed my life forever. Knowing his story and knowing what the nightmares he went through, and yet seeing how much he loved life, how he cherished every day of his life, taught me a lesson that we have to be grateful for every second of our life. It was a challenging and a very exciting project for me to depict his life in music. I don't remember mostly how I did it, but I was just so impressed and so deeply moved by his life story that music just came to me so naturally. But I can describe a few things that I did. I remember David talking about the moment when he finally acquired the violin after many months of not playing. He finally got the violin, he picked it up, and he described how he was not able to play because his hands were so tired of manual labor, he could not play. And he would drop the violin, then he would start again. And I wanted to describe that feeling, and you'll hear in the middle of the piece, you'll hear that the violin will start a melody and then kind of slide and start tuning. So I use this, I'll show you a little bit. So in the middle, you'll hear something like this on the piano. It's like a little pulse. And on top of this, you'll hear the violin tuning. And then starting the melody. And then sliding, and then tuning again. So I really, literally wanted to depict that moment of Arben struggling, yet at the end you'll hear that the melody will finally be singing, and this is the melody of a prayer, Shema Israel, that I was able to get from a very old rabbi. So it's a true melody. And in this piece, you'll hear that the violin is actually David's violin, and David's voice is spoken through a clarinet. So the clarinet and the violin, they have this interesting and very close relationship in this piece. So why don't we hear a little bit of Chaim? I think we have a little bit of a excerpt from the piece. Just a little bit from the piece.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Paulina. Really beautiful music. You know, when you send me your piece, Hope, I've actually Alex told me about the piece. I didn't know. I just opened the music. It was a couple of weeks ago that you've sent me. Really gorgeous composition. The harmonies that are very dear to my heart, and I hope that I brought them in the performance that we'll be hearing. Alex, do we have that performance or?
Yes, but before we'll go to that piece, Paulina, I have one more excerpt from the Chaim piece. Very
sure.
unusual, the narrator piece. Could you please tell us a little bit story how it came, and a little bit about the artist who will be performing? Can you tell us a little bit?
Sure. The artists of this performance are from the Musicum of Remembrance in Seattle. So the narrator's name is Eric Price, and he's reading the words by David Arben. David Arben actually wrote those words. And Rebecca, do you want to chime in here how this happened?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a journey. At first, I think he didn't, I wanted to have a moment of his words intertwined with Paulina's music, and the other person that wrote it, he wasn't completely happy with it, and so I it took a little bit of convincing, but I really asked him to write something in the first person. And so I'm so glad he did, and this is the result.
And he asked for the text to be read in silence.
Little did I know when I was a child that my interest in the violin would save my life. When I was young, my father used to take me to the barber shop where there were 3 barbers, and on the wall was a violin and a bow. When one of the barbers didn't have a customer, he would take down the violin and bow and play popular songs. The other barbers would sing along. I was enchanted with the sound of the violin. Upon returning home, I picked up 2 sticks, making believe I was playing the violin and singing along just like the barbers. This continued for some time. When I reached the age of 7, I was stricken with scarlet fever. My parents, knowing what the violin meant to me, kept telling me, "You get better and we will get you a violin." I recuperated, and my parents kept their promise. My father took me to the best teacher in Warsaw. I made great progress. Everybody was proud of me, and people spoke to my parents of my talent. After 9 months, I'd already played a recital at the Chopin Academy of Music in Warsaw. One of the most significant experiences happened when I was 9. My father took me to a concert of the Warsaw Philharmonic with Ephraim Zimbalist playing the Beethoven Violin Concerto. This experience impressed me so much that it became my dream to study with this great artist. The war started in 1939 when I was 12 years old. I am convinced that without the love and devotion of my family in the early years, I could not have survived the tortured existence in the Nazi concentration camps. I am the sole survivor of my family. I attribute my survival to the violin. In 1943, the Nazis selected 105 people deemed too young, sick, and old to be executed by firing squad. Being in front of the grave prior to the execution, I was plucked from the group by an influential individual who knew me to be a talented violinist. My devotion and love of playing the violin persisted even under the most unimaginable circumstances the world has ever known. In 1944, in the infamous Flossenburg concentration camp, I attempted to play in the camp orchestra. At first, I was refused because Jews were excluded from the orchestra. The Flossenburg camp had about 11% Jews. The rest were from all over Europe, all nationalities and different religions. The conductor of the orchestra was also a prisoner who was there because he was a German against the Nazi party and regime. He was also against the Jews. The main Nazi commandant of Flossenburg would visit the camp 2 to 3 times a week, and he would shoot someone dead each time he visited. I must have lost my mind because I ran up to him and said, "I'm a violin virtuoso, as my mother used to call me. The conductor of the concentration camp orchestra told me I couldn't play because he did not allow any Jews in the orchestra." The commandant said, "You come with me." We found that conductor, and I was permitted to play with the orchestra. Within days after liberation of the concentration camp, I obtained a violin and soon thereafter joined the ex-concentration camp orchestra in Munich, Germany. My dreams of studying with Ephraim Zimbalist came alive as I worked toward this goal. I left Germany for Geneva and became a student at the Geneva Conservatory. I finally arrived in the United States in 1949 and soon fulfilled my lifelong dream of having an audition with Ephraim Zimbalist and being accepted as his student at the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia. After graduating from Curtis, my professional career began in 1954 with the Detroit Symphony. Immediately following that year, I joined the Cleveland Orchestra for the next 4 years, from 1955 to 1959. I made my American solo debut in 1957 with the Cleveland Orchestra playing the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. After Cleveland, I spent 34 years with the Philadelphia Orchestra, soloing with them many times. I retired as the Associate Concertmaster in 1993. Before my retirement, I was active as a soloist in the United States, Europe, Asia, Mexico, South America, and I've been able to pass along this art by teaching and giving master classes. I consider myself to be very fortunate to have been able to create a life of harmony, joy, and wonderful friendships. The violin is the best thing that ever happened to me. It gave me life. For me, music is life. Music is hope. Music is peace. I cannot ask for more.
Well, with these very powerful words, let's continue and we will go to our last piece of music presentation, actually performed by Dr. Denis Krasnokutsky. Literally, it was put on a recording device just yesterday. And along with that piece of music, wonderfully written by Paulina and performed by Denis, I put a few picture, which we think very important to remind about the Holocaust, to remind about what's happening even right now. Like right now in my native country, where I was born, raised, and get my education, and a small country in the mid of Europe, in Belarus Republic. Right now, I can see small but very strong steps, unfortunately, going towards fascism and the new genocide of the people. You will see a few pictures from Belarus as well. As I've been informed just a few weeks ago, the information came out from the government of the Belarus that they're getting ready to build the detention centers and forms of the concentration camps, where they planning to put the peaceful protesters who are just trying to express they're willing to live and having basic human rights, freedom of speech, freedom of being elected or be able to elect the people who they would choose. Unfortunately, right now, people of Belarus suffering from the dictatorship of former president, a person who is still taking the power. Many of my friends who are musicians, when they open their mouths, they express their opinion. They were fired. They were forced to leave the country. Some of them got arrested, as many as other citizens of Belarus. Over 30,000 people were prosecuted one way or another in the past few months. I hope we will have opportunity to continue our educational events and talk about this more, to reveal some more information, to reveal what's happening in the Belarus and the other country. And as I said before, we as the artists, as the musicians, as the performers, we have a power of getting the people's attention and listen to us and learn about the history, learn about what's happening today, and have some feelings through the music, through the poetry, through the words, through the picture. So let's go to the last piece of music, Hope by Paulina Nazaikinskaya, performed by Denis Krasnokutsky. Thank you, Paulina. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you, Paulina.
Thank you, thank you, Alexei. Thank you, Rebecca.
Well, this will conclude our presentation for tonight. I'd like to thank everybody who connected, who are watching us through the Zoom or through the YouTube live channel or through our websites and the Facebook pages. Really appreciate your time, and thank you, New York Institute for the Humanity and the Social Studies, for giving us opportunity to perform again, to bring this program to the public again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope this this will end on more or less a good note, that life will go on, life shall go on, that we will be vigilant of the world around us, and should the circumstances require, we should not be afraid to speak out against something that is very wrong. We should not be afraid to tell our point of view, because if we won't, it might simply lead to the something that cannot be changed, like the Holocaust in Germany. Thank you so much again for joining us, and we hope to have future presentations very soon. We'll talk about various subjects related to humanities, to studies of humanities. Thank you. Bye-bye.